Okay, Carla, can you hear me? Okay, I'm testing the recording to make sure it will still work. Testing for the recording. Carla, can you hear me? Okay, good morning everyone on the Pacific Coast and Mountain Time. Good afternoon to everyone in Central Time and Eastern Time. I have the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us for our monthly All-America City Promising Practices webinar series. I'm Sarah Lipscomb and I'm the Director of the All-America City program. I also have with me Carla Kimbrough, the Director of our Racial Equity Program, who has been instrumental in putting these webinars together. And just wanted to briefly give you some background on National Civic League and the All-America City Award before we dive into our two great presenters. So the National Civic League is a nonprofit, and we've been around for 123 years. And our goal is to create inclusive, thriving communities by inspiring, supporting, and recognizing equitable approaches to community decision-making. And the All-America City Award is our flagship program. It's been around since 1949. And each year we name 10 All-America cities, and we really like recognizing the exceptional work that's happening around the country when it comes to civic engagement with local governments and local institutions. But what we really want to do is share the great innovative practices that are happening and make sure that everyone has access to that so that they can be adopted and adapted for your community. So this month of March, we are focusing on youth-related programs. And so for today's webinar, we have two outstanding speakers. One from Somerville, Massachusetts, which is a 3-time All-America City winner, and one from Denver, Colorado, which is where we are headquartered, so very close to our heart. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Stanley Pollock, who will be our first presenter.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. My name is Stanley Pollock, as Sarah said, and I'm the Executive Director and the founder of the Center for Teen Empowerment. And Teen Empowerment actually operates in Somerville. We operate in Boston. We have 2 sites in Boston, and we actually have a site in Rochester, New York. And I'll give a quick overview of what Teen Empowerment is. And then we're going to take a look at a video, which Sarah will explain how you can access that. And then I'll talk a little bit about what the keys to success are. And this is really focused on building positive relationships between youth and police, which is an issue that obviously is fairly pervasive right across the country. And we've all heard a million different stories and seen the kind of tragic results of not producing positive relationships between youth and police. So Teen Empowerment is a youth organizing project. What that means is we hire and train young people, and we hire those young people to represent the communities we're trying to reach. In terms of race, in terms of ethnicity, we have equally gender balanced groups, and in terms of social and emotional development. And what we're looking for are both youth who are doing pretty well and youth who are actually having some difficulties, all of whom are really motivated to create change. And what their job is to identify what the key issues are in their community, among which is police and community youth relationships, develop a strategy to have an influence on those issues, and then implement that strategy with the goal of trying to change for the better the value systems and belief systems of their peers, with the ultimate goal of changing patterns of behavior, reducing destructive behaviors in terms of gang violence, crime, and all those negative things, and increasing positive outcomes. So that's their jobs, and there's a lot to it, and I'll get into that a little bit further down the line. For the last 25 years, we've been working in Boston, and we've been in Rochester and in Somerville for the last 10 years. And in that, we have, over that time, we have developed a method of doing a lot of different things, but one of the things in particular that we've worked on a lot is developing positive relationships between youth and police, and seeing really the power that is unleashed when you bring youth and police together. And there's a number of important details about how that needs to be done, but when it is done with recognition of those kinds of factors and in terms of youth leadership and some other things, you can get some really remarkable results and really improvements in both how police are feeling about their work and how youth are feeling about their community. So it's very powerful. So, Sarah, do you want to sort of run through how people can access that video?
Yes, definitely. So again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. The video is about 5.5 minutes long, and it's really powerful and gives a great overview of the program. So we wanted to make sure that you all could watch it. So you may either get it from the email I sent out probably about 15-20 minutes ago, and again, that would be from Sarah Lipscomb. Or if you are on the online meeting currently, if you click on the I at the top right-hand corner, and then the very last one is meeting wall. And from there, you can scroll down, and on the right-hand side, it will say Teen Empowerment, and that should give you the link to the YouTube video under Meeting Resources.
And you click the arrow.
Yes, and click the arrow. And again, it's about 5.5 minutes long, so I apologize if you are driving or not able to watch a video right now, but we will go ahead and pause the presentation for about 5.5 minutes to allow everyone to watch the video. Again, it's a really great overview, and we think it's really important for you all to be able to watch that.
Now part of the solution. Dante Amoravi says he's been stopped by police hundreds of times, but he's never been arrested.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey.
We've had time to watch the video on our end. And again, I'm sorry if anyone was confused. I did post it in the chat. So if you weren't able to watch it, you will have access to it through the chat, and we'll send it out in an email after the webinar as well.
Right.
And with that, Stanley, I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, and so I also apologize for anybody who didn't get a chance to see the video, but I think it's important to take a look at it and see this in life and understand sort of the dynamics of it. As they were saying, you know, the essential thing is that young people have an opportunity to be able to meet police in a positive environment, which I know a lot of folks are working on that. But there's several other factors that are really important in our approach, and one is that we have high-risk youth involved in that process. And there's a way that we get that involved, but it's really important that you bring young people and police together, that it's not just the young people who are kind of ready for that experience, but the young people who are really resistant to that experience as well, and who are having difficulty with police. The other factor is youth leadership. So in our environment, we do not have police just talk to young people, and a lot of the police youth stuff that is done tends to be with youth, with the police and leadership instructing youth. In our environment, we have youth. We actually turn that upside down, and the youth are really in the leadership positions. The other factor is the use of interactive exercises, and if you did have a chance to see that video, what you saw was us doing a series of different exercises that really open young people to the police and open police to the young people as well. So when they come into that environment, they go through something that actually gives them the opportunity to really know the other person on a much deeper level. And so rather than kind of instructing people to have change, they have an experience that changes them. And regardless of whatever attitude they bring into that environment, when you have an experience that shows you that there's a difference between what you thought was reality and what is actual reality, it's a very powerful way to change, a process of change. And an authentic process of change takes place. So, for instance, one of the exercises that is most powerful that we use is called concentric circles, where young people and police are paired with one another, and they get a chance to talk for 2 minutes each in pairs, and then they switch, and they have they might get a chance to talk to 5 or 6 other folks. And the questions are things like, what do you remember about your first days in your neighborhood, and what did you like about it, and what didn't you like about it? Who was your favorite teacher in school, and the teacher that you had the most difficulty with? And a question like, if you're a police officer, what do you think it would be like to be a young person today? And if you're a young person, talk about what do you think it would be like to be a police officer, and actually literally have them stand in each other's shoes. That, along with a number of other exercises, really changes young people's understanding of what it is to be a police officer, and it creates, what it does for police is it breaks the stereotypes that they have. They sit opposite a young person who they first analyzed or perceived as a threat, which is what happens on the street all the time. And then they sit down with this young person, they find out that actually this young person is into playing chess or is a computer geek or whatever. All the kinds of things that you find that you're wrong about when you just look at the surface of somebody and then find out who they are on a deeper level. So that experience is very powerful. And then the last element that I would say is that I think that it's really important to involve young people as leaders, not only in working to improve relationships between youth and police, but as leaders in their community, lowering crime and violence. One of the really problematic factors when you're trying to improve police and community relationships is if the police are subject to large levels of crime and violence, which creates incredible fear and anxiety in their lives, and that's where a lot of other things take place. So I think this needs to be part of an overall approach. In terms of that, I would, if we could go to page 5 on the slide, one more. No, one more after that. This is one. So this is the teen empowerment model in these little boxes, and I won't spend a lot of time on it because we'll run out of time. But essentially, how we get young people to take on these roles of leadership is to go through this process of the model. And the way this works is it starts with a set of beliefs, and the primary belief is that young people have something to offer. So as I said in the video, we don't go to young people and say, come and get involved because you have problems and difficulties and we want to help you, which is not a bad thing to say to young people, and it's certainly accurate, but it is more attractive, and particularly with the higher risk youth, to talk to them about their assets and what they have to offer. And, in fact, they do have something to offer, and particularly in terms of trying to create change in negative behaviors. They really are the key. Their involvement is critical to those efforts. So that's one of the beliefs. And the other one is, as I was talking about, the use of interaction. And we have a very specific thing that we mean by that. We have a book called Moving Beyond Icebreakers, which you can look up on the web, which goes through the whole theory of using interactives and how those interactives can work to create changes in groups and understanding and create reflection among young people and a whole host of other kinds of goals that are really important. So we start with that set of beliefs, and we actualize those beliefs by implementing an outreach process for jobs. So again, we're going out with something that young people themselves value, and that is jobs that pay $10, $11 an hour, depending on which city we're in. We get a lot of young people to come together to be interviewed for those jobs, and they are interviewed in groups. And that's where they get exposed to the interactive methods, and we get to see a lot about these young people through that process. We then very carefully create a youth organizing group that is designed around the communities we're trying to reach. And as I said in the beginning, in terms of race, ethnicity, and our groups are balanced between, there are 14 folks in a group, 7 boys, 7 girls. We look at risk factors. We're looking for a group that has high-risk youth in it. We're looking for a group that has some lower-risk youth. The idea of that group is that it's a microcosm of the larger community. Once they're hired, they go through a training process, which has a lot of different dimension to it, but they learn planning skills, they learn public speaking, they learn conflict resolution, they learn marketing, they learn managing, and a host of other kinds of things. There's some theater skills and some performance art stuff that we integrate into this as well. And then those young people take a look at the problems that young people face in their community. They develop a strategy to have an impact on those issues, and they implement. And those strategies look like things like there's social events. Some of them are social events, open mics and coffee houses and that kind of thing. But also they create things like a lot of dialogues, police-youth dialogues, politician, public officials, youth dialogues, community youth dialogues, youth-to-youth dialogues. They also participate in the civic dialogue, going to various kinds of meetings run by the city council and other community groups, and participate in a whole host of organizing efforts, some of which we initiate, some of which are initiated by other organizations. And the goal of their work is to have an impact. The primary goal is to have an impact on community-wide change, and that is to lower rates of violence and gang involvement and drug use and all the host of ills that we're looking to impact. And to do that through influencing the value systems and belief systems of their peers to have a change on those patterns of behavior. We're also looking to have a positive impact on the youth organizers themselves and to have a positive impact on the service delivery system. And that's around having the service delivery system sort of more open and understanding of what the actual authentic needs of the young people are. So that's the teen empowerment model. And in terms of results, if we could take a look at slide number 8, I'll talk a little bit about the results. Maybe it's number 9, I guess. Yeah. That's the one I want to take a look at. So in Somerville, we had a study done by University of Massachusetts, and we've been in Somerville for 10 years. We went into Somerville because they had a very big problem with gangs and suicide and OxyContin addiction. And it was rampant. And they had 21 deaths of teenagers from suicide and overdose in about a 3-year period before we went in there. And there was, just a large level of gang involvement and violence, and the whole city was kind of in an uproar. And we were brought in. We did an assessment. We implemented the teen empowerment model. This was in around 2005, 2006. And it was done in collaboration with the police, with the entire community youth development sector of the city, and a lot of support from the mayor's office and the media. So this was not done by ourselves, but we were catalytic in shifting the attitude of the youth in the community, and also that of the power structure, away from one that demonizes young people to one that valued young people and was empathetic towards the problems that they were facing. And the short story is that there has been a huge decrease in crime in Somerville. It's actually greater than 50% now, and a very positive impact on all the youth who were directly involved. Also, over the last, there were 21 deaths due to suicide and overdose of teenagers during that 3-year prior period. Since 2006, there's actually been 1 death of a teenager due to suicide over the last now over 10 years that we've been there. And as you see in the youth risk survey, all trends are going in a positive direction among young people, and there's many variables involved in it, but the outcomes are tremendous. And I've seen this in a number of different communities, and it really is a focus on the value systems. So it's really what young people are deciding to do when adults aren't around that's key, and that's a cultural issue. And where all the other services that we're talking about are very, very important, whether it's counseling or tutoring or educational or what have you, those are all important. But the one that we are leaving out is the one where we're trying to impact that value system. And the key to that is youth leadership. So I think I should probably leave it there and turn it over to the next presenter at this point. Would you say, Sarah?
Yeah, that sounds good. We also wanted to open it up to questions for you first before we go to the next. All right, that's fine. That's great. And you will have time to ask questions now and after our next presenter at the end of the presentation. So just give me one moment to allow everyone to unmute yourself if you. So if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask Stanley. All right, well, that's okay. We'll go ahead and move on to our next presenter, and I'm sure there will be more questions at the end. So I will go ahead and turn it over.
Great. So my name is Gia Irlando. I'm with the Office of the Independent Monitor in Denver, Colorado. The Office of the Independent Monitor is an independent civilian oversight agency for the Denver Police and the Denver Sheriff's Department. We do not work under these departments. We actually monitor internal affairs investigations, provide policy recommendations, participate in the discipline process, as well as per function of the city ordinance, we actually address issues of concern to the community, and that's kind of all encompassing around police issues. So we take in commendations as well as complaints, and really spend a lot of time out in the community kind of getting a feel for what kind of tensions and other situations are happening around policing. In 2013, we actually noticed kind of an uptick in the number of youth-related concerns around low-level interactions that often resulted in youth being contacted and even arrested by Denver police. When we looked into these situations, it became really apparent that there were a couple of things going on. Number one, there was definitely a lot of misunderstanding between the two groups. Youth thought that they knew their rights, didn't necessarily understand their rights or their responsibilities during those contacts. And officers really expected youth to act, to comply with their demands and commands and to act more like adults than youth, in that they weren't taking any kind of youth development or adolescent brain development into consideration when they were speaking to youth. You can go on to the next. So we're really interestingly situated where we do actually work with the police department on a number of issues, both around our caseloads, around recommendations, and around outreach. But we also have a really good link to the community and are out in the community regularly. In the last 3 years, we've actually done over 500 community events and presentations and meetings. In the last year alone, I believe it was 230. So we really have good access to community, and community comes to us around a lot of their concerns and issues that they'd like to actually deal with around the police department and the sheriff's department. In 2014, we looked for grant money to see if there was something that we could do around this, and we were actually given a justice assistance grant to kind of start doing the research and figure out who was doing what in this area of youth and officer relations. We launched the program at that point and started doing research. I really just have to tell Stanley, I love your program. I would love to actually have that program in Denver along with ours. Ours is a little bit of a different model. We pretty much, you can go on to the next slide. We really seek to improve those relationships between youth and law enforcement. But ours is a little bit of a smaller touch, I would say, with huge impacts. So we don't hire the youth. They are not compensated for participating, but we do invest heavily in the community partners that we train to facilitate the dialogue between youth and officers. And we also invest pretty significantly in the officer training on adolescent development and de-escalation techniques. So we educate youth on their rights and responsibilities when in contact with officers. We educate officers on adolescent development and de-escalation. And we do that, and then we convene facilitated forums between youth and officers, which are 5 hours in length, and I'll actually walk you through that in just a moment. So the officer training is a full-day training. It is based on a curriculum that came from, it's an evidence-based curriculum out of Connecticut. It's called Effective Police Interactions with Youth. Sorry about that. And to date, we actually have, this number is even wrong. I got numbers back yesterday. We're actually at 194 DPD officers that have been trained in this full-day curriculum. This curriculum actually includes an implicit bias piece, so that officers are really reflecting on their own biases as they make decisions in the juvenile justice kind of decision-making pieces. The DPD actually has committed to another 100 officers in 2017, but actually per their promises and per our grant stuff, we were really only ever supposed to be at about 80 officers at this point. So this is kind of taking hold, and it's post-certified, so officers actually get continued education training doing it, and many are opting to do it without anybody suggesting or influencing them to take this training. So we feel really good about the number of officers that have gone through. They also get an additional 2 hours of training during each forum. Youth are trained during the forums, and we work with community partners to recruit them. So they come in from various youth serving organizations, schools, and other school or strength-based programming. Youth actually are given a really good hour-long session on constitutional rights, and that's actually done by Learn Your Rights in Colorado, which is a group of attorneys that donate their time to make sure that youth actually understand what happens during potential arrests and otherwise, and that they actually understand their constitutional rights and preserve their rights during that process. The youth are also given an implicit bias workshop so that we can actually begin to talk about bias and race, which is kind of at the heart of a lot of the conversations that happen between youth and officers. Why did you stop me? I'm being targeted. A lot of those kind of things come from youth during these conversations, so we want everybody to be primed to be able to have the conversation about youth injustice. And then we actually go through a lot of kind of proper police practice stuff during that training so that they understand how officers are not only trained, but also why they do some of the things that they do and what leads to escalation during contacts. Examples are keeping your hands in your pockets when asked to take them out, keeping your hands on the wheel during traffic stops. All of those things are cause for escalation if officers do not feel that their safety is, if they feel that their safety is at risk. To date, we've actually held 15 forums. Almost 600 youth have gone through those forums. And then we have an additional touch on youth that we actually use the constitutional rights training and the implicit bias training to recruit them. Part of the success of this program, besides the number of youth that have gone through, the number of officers that have been trained, and the fact that we've been able to get the funding and keep these going, is the fact that we very early on realized that the community really had to own this program, and it was going to be the community facilitating these dialogues if it was actually going to take root and work for everyone. So we started a facilitator training series in early 2016, the beginning of last year, where we have actually brought in facilitation experts as well as component experts for each of the areas you see listed below. And facilitators are paid to train as well as paid to deliver the actual curriculum during the 5-hour forum. During this training, they actually get facilitation skills, and one of the others, generally everybody gets emotional intelligence training. To date, we have 87 youth and adults who've been trained as facilitators. 21 of them are actually youth that participate in the forums as well as they're compensated for participating in both. And 82 are people of color. And again, we felt like this was really an important thing to have when you're in communities of color and immigrant communities. You really want to have people that match the demographics to be able to facilitate these conversations. During the forums, we actually have pre-registered small groups. Right at registration, you actually get to decide exactly where, or you don't get to decide, we decide where we're putting you. So we have one officer, generally 2 facilitators, and 7 to 8 youth that are considered a small group. Initially, they have only the colored lanyards that give them that, and you can kind of see that in the photo. But by midday, they're actually working in those small groups with the facilitator helping to guide the dialogue as well as to make sure that that they are recording what's being talked about, and also a couple of important things that everybody has to come back to the table and present. So they come in, that we do a cultural welcoming, mostly for the youth, to put them a little bit at ease. We have a spoken word artist and rapper that actually always does that piece. So, we set expectations during that time. Then we go into training breakouts. So officers go one direction, mostly with facilitators. Youth go another direction. That's when they get their implicit bias training and their constitutional rights training. Officers get any of the components that most of them have not had, because we don't always use the same officers. We try and give them a good rounded experience with the other curriculum components, which include the restorative justice, mental health first aid for youth, trauma-informed practice, emotional intelligence, all the ones that were named earlier. Once they come out of their training breakouts, and you can imagine that the morning has actually been not only empowering, but also really kind of stressful especially for the youth, because there are officers in the building and a good number of them. They come back and they're expected to be in their small groups for lunch. They break bread together. This is an opportunity for people to kind of do the informal conversations. Youth inevitably make all kinds of jokes about donuts, and officers get a feel for for what ages the youth are, what schools they go to, all that good stuff. So it's informal but facilitated dialogue. And then they go into their breakout sessions. We call these the Kids and Cops circles, and this is where they're actually charged with really getting to the conversations about how they've dealt with each other in the past, what past interactions have looked like, and also what they really want to know about each other. And oftentimes this is where, especially the youth, unpack a lot of their experiences or things that they've heard about officer actions and different incidents. This is where the facilitation is actually most important and where it's most impactful. So facilitators are actually given a number of tools to actually go into the small group work. Among them, depending on how comfortable they are role play. They have different kinds of icebreakers that they can use. Sometimes they don't even need any of that, and they go straight to what they need to come out of the group with, which is a list of tips for officers, a list of tips for youth, and then some next steps for the community. And when we talk about next steps for the community, we really are talking about what public safety really looks like to everybody, and what good public safety looks like to everybody in the small group. So you'll see a lot of comments in there about, knowing that they actually can call 911 when they need it. Officers actually talking about, youth actually being able to help, to help with public safety by owning it and making sure that, that neighborhoods are, I don't want to give the impression that youth are pushed to, in any way, shape, or form, inform, but they should actually be calling when their safety is at risk. So, we encourage youth to actually take that upon themselves, especially with some of the stories that we've heard during these small circles around kids not calling the cops, fearing that parents would be taken away if they actually did. We've had cops actually really, officers unpack some of their bad experiences, not only with youth, but, just as being officers, having to make a decision around officer-involved shootings, really being fearful when they were in different situations. And what we find when we actually put together these lists then and report them back out, the youth and the officers both report them back out, is that the lists generally look about the same, right? You have everybody asking for respect. You have everybody saying, stay calm. You have everybody saying, I want to know, what's going on and what's next and why why I'm here and if I can leave. So it's just basically better communication and better understanding about what's happening during these youth officer contacts. Officers are in full uniform during this time, during the entire forum. There's been some conversation about bringing them in without uniforms, but in all honesty, we really want people to confront what they confront out on the streets, and for youth to walk away with feeling empowered and also very clear about what's going to happen during interactions and what their rights are around those interactions, so that they can be calm and get through them without any kind of system touch. So we collect surveys during each of the forums, and some of the comments that come out both on the side of the officers as well as the side of youth are just, really heartwarming, and the perspective is interesting. Officers have learned a lot of really small things. One of them came into a small group that, was talking about how officers are portrayed in social media and they're always targeted, and they had youth actually grab the newspaper from that day and show them how many black and brown men were in the newspaper as either suspects or wanted or in jail orange, making an appearance in front of a judge. And the officer walked away, talking about the light bulb moments, right? that it was a very different perspective than he had otherwise. That's one of my favorite ones. Youth walk away generally talking about how much they've learned about what their rights are and actually how to utilize them, and also how to utilize their intuition around if an officer is having a bad day or if they're not going to get listened to and if they could be in danger. So it's, we're really just encouraging everybody to, be as calm as possible, to try and get some mutual understanding on the streets, but, to get along out there so that everybody can go home safely. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on achievements. We've really done a good job at doing everything that we set out to do. We have a really good group of advisors that we call our YPAC, our Youth Project Advisory Committee. There are academics, there are service providers, there are other city agencies, there's law enforcement on that committee, and we convene them regularly to kind of check in and give us, kind of validate the progress that we've made and give us suggestions about not only who else we can reach, but also what else we should be doing around improving our programming. They helped us to decide to go to a higher age group. So this year we're going to be piloting a 19 to 24-year-old age group outside of the youth forums. We'll be doing young adult forums. That population is also really struggling with touches with the justice system, and we're hoping that we can actually teach them some positive, positive ways to get out of touching the system on low-level contacts. Denver's also answered the challenge to Obama's My Brother's Keeper initiative, and our program was identified right off the bat as being a promising program to be able to work on the juvenile justice issues in Denver. We can go on to the next one. We are very much trying to figure out how we can actually have the biggest impact now that we know that we're really reaching a good number of youth and a good number of officers each year. We've been asked to do a train the trainer model for this, and we've been consulted by many different jurisdictions that would like to see this programming, just like we wanted to see it a couple of years ago when we had to develop it. So we have an outcome evaluation that began late last year and will go through early 2018, and we're hoping that that actually gives us a little bit of an evidence base that we're making more than a perception leap on this work. So we're excited about that, and we'll be posting the success of that. If you'd like more information on the program, you can actually go to www.kidsandcops.org. That's where we list not only our facilitator trainings, but also our officer trainings and the forums that we have coming up. And most of those are at least the facilitator training is an Eventbrite click. We welcome anybody from the area that'd like to get facilitator training and is willing to offer 3 to 5 forum deliveries for that training to sign up. We have one coming up in a couple of weeks, but we have them every 6 to 8 weeks throughout the year.
Great, thank you so much. And I just got a question about if this will be available afterwards, and it will. We are recording this presentation. We'll send it out in an email. We'll post it on our website, and highly encourage everyone to share it with anyone who you think would be interested. So I want to go ahead and open it up again for questions, and feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question on either presentation. And if no one does, I have a question. So I hope that Stanley is still on the line, and this is for both of you, but just kind of wondering about what are the most successful strategies you've seen in recruiting youth to be a part of these programs?
So for the Kids and Cops program, and so we call it Bridging the Gap Kids and Cops, but it really is our youth outreach piece of the bigger work that we do. For us, it meant bringing youth into the planning process and also allowing them to help facilitate these dialogues. I think, we wouldn't be where we are unless youth were actually helping to guide that. And I think that's probably the same for Stanley. Please respond.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. We have a whole number of different things that we do, but one of the things we've done that's been really successful, we have talent shows and that sort of thing, which I'm sure a lot of people have in their communities, but we've had officers in the talent shows themselves performing, which is just unbelievably freeing, and they're in uniform and they're up on the stage and dancing and doing crazy stuff. We do this big conference called the Peace Conference, which is an original play that young people write and then perform in, and we had the police as part of that play, which was probably one of the highlights. Actually, it's on the web as well. So that sort of thing, and we do basketball leagues and that like kids police basketball stuff, and then of course the dialogues. And I mean, the key to our outreach is that we have a core group of youth who are connected in the community to do the outreach and to get their peers in. So we've had very large conference kind of things with police with 150, 200 people there, lots and lots of young people, lots and lots of police. We have tremendous support from the police department, as it sounds like you do as well in Denver, which is just fantastic, which, by the way, just sounds like you guys are doing incredible things. But that's key because, we get the community and you need the police. And I think, in terms of the vehicles, you just can't have enough of them. I mean, the more interaction that people can have where they're building relationships, getting to know each other, humanizing, the better off you are. And I think the major shift that needs to be happen is really a shift in perspective from taking to looking at police as sort of an occupying force that's there to enforce the law, to seeing them as a part of the community, and that the work that they do around community building is not some kind of little public relations add-on that they're putting on, look at the nice thing we're doing, but it is really a central part of their job, and not just in a particular department, the community policing department. All police are community police. All police need to be engaged in efforts to build relationships and understanding and consciousness about their connection to the community, and have the community have the opportunity to get them to know them as well as human beings. So that's the kind of shift, and it has a lot of ramifications because there's a lot of resource issues in terms of how police are budgeted and how their time is scheduled. And so there's a lot more I could say about that, but I'll leave it there for now.
Yeah, thank you both. And I just want to say I really like the approach that you guys are both taking, very positive from the youth perspective, and I think that that's something that is really resonating with the group listening to this webinar. I'm going to go ahead and okay, so just in case people were having trouble unmuting themselves, everyone is unmuted now, so feel free if you have a question to go ahead and chime in.
It would be great to hear from anybody, even if they didn't have a question, but how this is operating in their own communities. I mean, is police-youth relationships an issue in your community, and how are people dealing with it?
That's great, Stanley. Thanks for turning the question back on the audience. Does anyone want to comment about how you see this in your community today?
Can I be heard?
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
So this is Michael Simmons, and I'm with my Brothers Keepers work here in the city and county of Denver, and I've been involved with quite a bit of the pieces that Office of Independent Monitoring is doing, and probably one of the most positive things that's happening right now is having young people have the opportunity to have the courage to ask questions that sometimes they used to get beat up on in their own communities as well. One of the concerns I've always had is really, as we're doing this work, is what are we doing in regards to kids at a younger age, because we know that realistically we're targeting our 19 to 24 years of age and a little younger than that, but one of our biggest challenges even for us, and I think Gina can attest to this, is those middle school young people who are basically being influenced by the older kids, and they themselves also need to be a part of this work, because I think what's happening is that we need to move a little bit further upstream a little bit, rather than waiting for these kids to get to this age where they really have a lot of impact. one of the concerns I've had is really dealing with those young people at a younger age as well. And so I'm watching this work, and I'm knowing that as we're moving forward, and I know I have a lot of faith in what OIM is doing, I'm really more and more locking at it. And so one of the work that we're doing here, and my Brothers Keepers work, is trying to deal with these young boys who are between ages of 11, 9 years of age, who are really struggling a lot, dealing with the issues of trauma, because they're going back and forth between home and schools, trying to navigate themselves, and yet sometimes don't have the right answers or the right questions. And so for us, a lot of my interest now is, now that we're doing some good work on the other end, I'm really looking more and more of a younger age group who are heavily influenced and have a lot to offer, and I'd like to see us do a little bit more work around that, if that makes sense to people.
Absolutely. So yeah, our programming actually does go down to middle school, and actually last weekend, it was the weekend before last, we actually had an all middle school forum. I would agree with you on some level. It's, it's the whole kind of staying in our lane kind of thing. This curriculum was specifically set up to work with youth that had already had some contact or some touch with officers, and when you get lower than that, generally it's through somebody else, their contact, or through something that's happening in their household. And I think it may be a different curriculum, but we keep expanding and changing our approach to this to meet the needs of what the community says that they'd like to see. Like I said, we just expanded our target population up to age 24, and we also are hoping to be able to have the resources to develop our parent track, which would actually bring in community members, hopefully parents and guardians of youth that have gone through the forums or want to go through the forums, to be able to have these same conversations with them. But I'm not positive how quickly we're going to be working down the age ladder due to funding and other resources.
Yeah, I guess I'd have a similar answer, really. I mean, I think that it's right that, that working with the younger people would be important as well. But, yeah, it's really a capacity issue and how much you can actually take on. So we're struggling with how much we can do. And I'm interested in Denver. Have you seen impacts on the level of complaints from youth and some of those indicators, changes in positive outcomes in terms of that?
So no, except when we actually look at all of our survey stuff. We're very excited about the outcome evaluation that's just started, because we actually would like to see whether or not this control group is having, a different touch than the ones that we actually are sending through the forum. I think, it's important to really point out that while we could actually reach 600 youth a year and maybe even reach 1,000 with more money and more programming, the real lasting, I think, success of this program is the number of officers that are being trained and understanding their role as gatekeepers, and the number of community facilitators that are able to have these conversations in their community-based organizations and in their schools, because they actually understand the dynamics, they understand the communication gaps, they understand what's kind of at play with social emotional behavior in stressful situations. So a lot of our facilitators are actually having these conversations, even though they're not forums and there's not necessarily officers present. They're having these conversations with parents and with youth about how to stay safe and about how to actually take responsibility for your own actions during these contacts. Officers are having conversations about youth actually knowing their constitutional rights and, and knowing that people are teaching them to them. And so, the sustainability of the program, I believe, is way beyond the youth to adults and youth facilitators in our community that are learning this stuff and that know how to negotiate it.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, sorry, one thing I am noticing, though, as I do a lot of riding back and forth through the neighborhoods that we're touching, I'm seeing more young people speaking to police officers on the street and not having intimidation.
And we get feedback from the officers as well that's happening.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing too.
Yeah, and that's a real positive thing for me. Go ahead, though. Whoever's going to speak.
Great.
I was just going to say, go ahead. Whoever's speaking, go ahead.
We've got about 4 minutes left, but I just wanted to get to 2 other questions that came in through the chat. The first one was, if there's other cities who have contacted Somerville or Denver to learn more about your programs, and if other cities are implementing your initiatives and projects.
Well, Teen Empowerment is operating in 3 cities. We are operating in Rochester, New York. And we have a full police youth program there, which includes training and all kinds of different things that are similar to what we're doing in Somerville. And we're doing it in Boston. We're doing it in 2 neighborhoods in Boston. In fact, we're going to have all 3 police chiefs and the police commissioner are going to be meeting at the end of March to talk about best practices in the 3 cities and how we can get more attention for this on a national level.
So in Denver, we are consulted kind of on a regular basis. Some MBK chapters have actually reached out to us, but also we're very connected to the statewide mentoring coalition, as well as some of the players in the national mentoring kind of circles that are trying to figure out how to put this programming into their into their training, and as well as some of their programming at different places. So we have consulted with quite a few jurisdictions. We're not ready, we hope to actually be in a place where this is a curriculum that we can actually give to somebody and kind of do some technical assistance. And we've been asked for it many, many times. We're hoping that the outcome evaluation will guide us a little bit more about how effective it is on, youth in the juvenile justice, youth not in the juvenile justice system in a couple of years.
Great, and we've got about 2 minutes left. We had one more question, which I think is really important for people who haven't done this work yet and want to know how to implement it. But what are some of the startup costs and time involved at the very beginning of programming?
Well, a teen empowerment site, which does a lot more than the police youth work that we do is integrated into an overall community change strategy. So it's kind of hard to tease out the exact cost for that. But our project costs about, depending on what you get in kind and so forth, somewhere around $200,000 a site as an annual budget. But for a city of Somerville size, that's all you need. You need one site to have some really significant outcomes, not just in terms of police-youth relationships, which we have tremendous relationships in the city of Somerville, very low levels of complaints against police officers and very low levels of crime. So it's about, a city like Boston, you need, a larger city, you need more than one site.
So the startup cost for us was really bringing on a staff person initially. We also have about a $200,000 budget that doesn't even really touch on the cost to the department for providing the officers. It covers some of their time, but not all of the time that officers spend training and or delivering the curriculum forum or the forum curriculum. I would say that it really is dependent on how quickly you can move. I mean, we started with a budget of $60,000, and in 2 years we're up to $200,000. But we're within a city that also supports, in-kinding a lot of people's expertise and staff time, and a lot of manpower at the actual forums, especially early on. So each one of our forums costs more or less, with all of the adults being paid or compensated in some way or another, and all of the facilitators and the rest of the adults. They cost about $3,000 because of the food costs, because of facilities, because of the materials, and then again the people time. But that's, you can't jump straight into that. And of course we're housed in a city agency and all that good stuff, so it would be substantially more, but you could start much more locally and figure out how to do it for much smaller amounts initially.
Great. Well, I just want to say thank you again to Stanley and Gia. We really appreciate the time and sharing your excellence programs. And again, look for the email after with the recording of the presentation. And thank you guys so much for joining us.
Great.
Sure. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the presentation.